Hi, I'm Metta Spencer, and today I get to interview a friend of mine, Reiner Braun, who is the co-president of the International Peace Bureau. He's in Berlin today, and I had a chance to get back in touch with him a few months ago when he was here in Toronto giving an award to my friend Douglas Roach. So now he's about to give another award, I guess, to another friend who is in Britain, right? Bruce Kent. So here is Reiner Braun in Berlin. Hi, Reiner.
Hi, Ed. Great to meet you again.
Okay, well, let's get started. And I don't have an agenda, as I said, but I do want to sort of get back in touch with what's going on in, well, the International Peace Bureau, which is the oldest, long-standing, very important umbrella organization of peace groups in the world. What year was it that they got the Nobel Peace Prize, Reiner?
It was in 1910. IPB was founded in 1891, and it got the Peace Nobel Prize in 1910, 5 years later after Bertha von Suttner got the first woman Nobel Peace Prize.
Okay. Well, so I knew it was a long time ago, and there's a lot of water has flowed under the bridge since then, but at any rate, it's good to see you. Now, I haven't been to Europe in about 3 years. I'm not traveling so much anymore. So I have no idea what's going on except what I get in the press, and you have your fingers on the pulse. Why don't you give me your sense of where things stand in terms of the peace movement in Europe and whatever else. If you have a global perspective, even that is fine too.
You know, for us, I think it's a very interesting time, but it's also a very dangerous time. I think on one side, we have to see that the two existential threats are really big. On one side, the danger of a nuclear war, and on the other side, all the climate changes. But in the climate issue, I think we can see that we have a new, never had mass mobilization, above all by young people. And this is really very impressive in Europe, and especially in Germany, that we have hundreds of thousands, millions of young people, school boys, school girls, but also students on the streets, which are really very, very active. And the old story that our young people are unpolitical and don't want to be active, they are only consumering, and this story is definitely over after the last months. They were really very active and engaged on the street, and it was impressive to see them, how they mobilized, how they were acting. And for the peace movement, strategic work is to combine the environmental movement and the peace movement. The similarity of both movements, accepted that they have to do their main job, but there's a lot of political and scientific and social overlap between these two movements, and we have to bring them together. This is a huge challenge on one side, but on the other side, there are a lot of chances also for the peace movement to become again more influential, more active, and more bigger. Because when you are looking to the peace movement in Europe, you can say on one side, the peace movement is stable. On the other side, you really have to say that the peace movement in Europe is not a movement which is able for mass mobilization in our times. There are some countries where it's a bigger and stronger movement, for example, in Great Britain, but in the most European countries, the peace movement is not very influential. That is the reality we have to face. And in Europe, I think we have two central points for the political discussion. One is how we are dealing our activities with Russia. What is the European-Russian confrontation with the enlargement of NATO to the east, with all the consequences, all the new maneuvers, all the new troops of Central European countries at the Russian border. This is the key issue. And the second key issue is everything which is related to chauvinism and nationalism and right-wing activities
Mm-hmm.
in many countries, including fascist actions and brutal killing of people on the street. So these are two definitely challenges we have in a lot of European countries. And one main point, which is not in all countries in the same way, but is also Brexit. The consequences of Brexit for the economy and the consequences of Brexit for United Europe is immense, and this is also a key point of our discussion. So you see, these are some of the main political points which are on the agenda of the peace movement. And for IPB, I can say we are some days before our big triangle conference. I think you remember that we have all the 3 years our big General Assembly with new election, with a new board, and with a discussion in the council about the strategy of the organizations for the next 3 years. And this conference will be starting on Friday with the board meeting, Saturday with assembly and council, and on Sunday with the new common conference of Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament as a CND and IPB. So it will be a very interesting, but also a little bit stressful weekend for all of us. So that's a little bit the story.
That's coming up this coming weekend.
Yes. I'm leaving Germany tomorrow for a first trip to Brussels, to the European Parliament, and then go straight on with a train, not flying, with a train to London.
Well, all of these points that you've raised are almost all of them are extremely relevant here too. We have the same question about how to hook the peace movement to the environmental and global warming issue. I think that's probably something we should talk about first. Russia is a never-ending issue for me, and I guess a lot of other people. I guess the only thing we don't have much to say about is Brexit. So, although I'm consumed with curiosity about it, it looks as if Boris Johnson might get approval from the EU, but not necessarily from Parliament in Britain. So it looks like a toss-up. Let's handle that and get rid of it, because I don't think we need to talk about it at length. Because it's all very speculative. But what do you think about Brexit? And then we can move on. What do you think is going to?
You have to see the background of the Brexit. The background of it is that millions of people in Great Britain and other countries are suffering by the neoliberalistic economic development. They are really poor, and they have not enough to eat. They have not enough for their social life, and the consequence is that they come to nearer to nationalist behavior. It is very easy understanding what's happened there. It's the same which we have with the right-wing development in France and in other countries. The social issue brings people to nationalist behavior. The social issue destroyed normal democratic developments. So the main point for me is how we can overcome the neoliberalistic economic system and come again back to a more social system which helps the poor and not only make the rich richer and the poor poorer. I think this is the background. And in this case, the neoliberalistic behavior, the European Union was playing a very, very bad game, not only looking to Greece, what they have done with the left government in Greece, but also looking to the unsocial political development in many, many countries, the pressure against social development in Spain, in Portugal, in Italy. So the consequences are that the right-wing populist parties become stronger and stronger.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's a whole, that particular topic is something that I bring up in almost every conversation I have about what is the real explanation. And of course, it's not just Europe, it's global. And we see it in the US, of course, the rise of nationalism. I think it is certainly partly economic, but I think there's more to it as well, because I don't want to dwell on this, but the people who voted for Trump had higher levels of economics, their finances were better than the people who voted for Hillary. Not that I was enthusiastic about Hillary, but because I think she was one huge hawk. But at any rate, that I think we can't explain it entirely by economic development, but certainly that's the place where we can do the most intervention in terms of overcoming the inequality issue.
Yeah.
So for sure, that has to play into it, I think.
And you know that the people have fear for the future. I think this is a very important point. They must not be poor at these days, but they have the fear that they will be poor in the future, and that their children will not be living under better living conditions than they are living. And this brings them to nationalist behavior and to giving up a social understanding of their whole life.
Well, look, I don't live in Europe, so I can't judge, the mentality of people who are nationalists, but I do feel that there's more to it in North America. And I think it has something to do, my friend Arlie Hochschild had a book called Strangers in Their Own Land. And I think I find myself more of a Weberian than a Marxian, in that I find that many of these people are extremely resentful because of a loss of dignity, of status, of social status, of respect in the society compared to immigrants or people that they're resenting. This whole thing about political correctness, that's a very interesting concept, because these are people who are extremely hostile to elites, to you and me, regardless of our politics, just because we are educated and sophisticated and look down on their bigoted ways or their simplistic religion or their interest in carrying guns or some of these other cultural factors, and they are extremely hostile because of that. And I think a good part of the resentment comes from the sense of loss of status in the U.S. and maybe other countries as well. Anyway, I'm not European, and I don't have. That's not what we got together to talk about today. Anyway, it is important for sure, and I don't know an answer really, because
you can see in some European countries where the social inequality is not so big, that it is much more difficult for the right-wing parties to grow up. Look, for example, to Portugal. The last government in Portugal, which was a social democratic government supported by two other left parties, made it much more social politics. And the consequences of the last elections were that the right-wing parties got only one seat in the parliament, and around 2 or 3%. But in these countries where the inequality is very, very big, like Germany or also like France, the right-wing are really a strong part of it, of the country now. In France, Le Pen is about 25%, and in Germany, the right wing is about 14-15%. That had a lot to do with dignity of the people, definitely it has. But why these people are searching for dignity? Because their status is so bad, and they believe that they have a bad status. The biggest part of the right-wing voters in Germany is in the former German Democratic Republic, in the east part of Germany. Because we really were very undignity to these people. We take everything from them. We take their dignity, we take their working places. We brought only the West German bureaucrats to them. They have nothing to say in their own country. So that is the background, which has a lot to do with dignity, but also a lot to do with social behavior and social situation of the people. And social means also social position.
You classify Germany and France as highly unequal. I wasn't maybe aware of that sufficiently. I had the impression that Germany and France were pretty egalitarian economically, that there's a lot of it's very unequal.
This time is definitely a long time over. After these neoliberalistic reforms from Schröder in the beginning of the year 2000s, the Germany becomes a totally unequal country. The rich 10% have their property is about 70% of the whole property of the country. And the richest 1 or 2% are in the same way rich like in the United States. So this is the situation. The difference is that the poor in Germany are not so poor, and even the poor people have a rest of social support by the government and the state, but it is really a minimum rest where you cannot live with dignity.
All right. Okay. That was maybe what I had in mind when I said at least they have a floor. They can't fall as far, maybe.
So they cannot fall so deep down, and they will be not so alone like the poorest of the poor are in the United States.
Yeah. Right.
That is definitely different. But it is not an equal right of living.
Right.
Because when you have in Germany an income per month between 400 and 500 euro, you can't survive. It is very, very difficult. You are bankrupt every month after the 20s. Even when you try to save everything and change every penny twice or 3 times before you buy something.
Okay, well, I take your point. I absolutely don't disagree. And of course, last night we heard the Democratic candidates in the U.S. Discussing what to do next. And I think, unfortunately, the most telling point that one of them made is, look, we've been having the same argument for many elections, talking about inequality, and yet nothing gets done. So that he was claiming that the resentment of voters who turned to Trump stemmed from the fact that they were convinced that nothing would be done no matter what people said. And that, of course, it's quite possibly the case. Certainly, the question is, even now, would they be able to affect really significant changes? I mean, this thing of a Green New Deal is a gorgeous idea, but I don't know that it's necessarily going to win the election for anybody.
Yeah, but for me, the Green New Deal idea is in some kinds a really brilliant idea when they combine it with the reduction of military spending. That is for me the key point. And I'm very happy that some of the young ladies from the Democratic Party new in the parliament are doing it. So I think in this kind it's a very helpful idea because it shows that there are alternatives which can be paid. And we have the same problems in Europe. We have the 2% discussion in all NATO countries. And for the first time in history, we will have a military budget of the German parliament with more than 50 billion euro. We never had that. This is again rising up about 7% in relation to the last year. And we definitely need this money. We need this money for solving the problem with the climate change. We need a lot of new energy systems related to the climate necessities. We need new technology transfer, which is reducing the CO2 emissions, new housing and which is everything is cost intensive. So it is absolutely stupid to spend this money for military purposes, but our government is doing it. And the good point is that for all pools, the majority of the German people are in opposition to these 50% spending of the German government.
Okay, let's see if that happens, because of course Trump even a year or two ago was saying you guys have to pay more, and Europe has to pay more, and even Canada has to pay more for military, and Trudeau said yes sir, whatever you say sir, and would in fact be increasing the military budget. So we are not making very fast progress, but at least this gives us a segue into talking about the connection between the military and the issue of global warming.
Yeah.
And I guess that, to my mind, it is true here as well, and I suppose almost everywhere, that the young people are far more interested and concerned about climate change than they are about military things, or especially about nuclear weapons. And when I talk to young people, or, well, not just young, but especially young maybe, about nuclear weapons, they just think it's an old-fashioned concern, not, it's not their concern. Well, but they certainly are concerned about global warming. And I guess one of my questions would be, what is the most promising strategy for making the connection in their minds so that we can link the two things? Now, you have the Global Day of Action. Well, you've changed the title a little bit, but Global Day Against Military Spending, which is a global campaign. And
Yes.
it seems to me that would be the most logical first point in the argument, right?
You know, the reason to change the one word, day to campaign, is very easy. When we are discussing this internationally, many of our friends were saying, we cannot do this on this specific day. So we want to have a period of days. So now this highlight campaign is about 4 weeks. And to name it correctly, would change the word global day in global campaigns against military spending. But from the content and from the activities, it's absolutely the same. You know, I see
GCAMS now, huh? GCAMS.
Yeah. And you know, we even are discussing again how we handle this next year, because you know we have more countries taking part. Last year we are now over 60 countries which were taking part, but we have in total less activities. So it's a need to strategize a little bit how we develop this campaign for the future, and this will definitely one of the important points which we will discuss at our council meeting now in London. But you know, the combination, the young people and military, you know, what my impression is from a lot of discussion with the young people, and we were really going to them, having our banners and saying no to military spending or no to nukes. They are very open for this discussion, but we have to start this discussion. We have to go to them and discuss with them about the second important threat, the nuclear weapons and the wars. Because, you know, nuclear weapons are not a part of the mainstream discussion in our countries. They are not since years. We are doing a lot, and our activists are really great, again and again going on the street, mobilizing against nuclear weapons, but it is not a mainstream discussion. And our governments avoid everything that it will become a mainstream discussion. So the only thing is we can go to them and try to convince them and show what are the consequences of a nuclear war, what does this mean nuclear winter, and coming back with our good old traditional answers which we have. I think that is one job peace movement has to do, and I can see we have 2 weeks ago we had in I think 8 cities in France common demonstration of the anti-nuclear weapons movement and the climate movement. Including nuclear weapons and climate change. So
that connection. Was it just from the standpoint of let's shift the money from the one to the other, or was it also, and by the way, nuclear weapons are a bit dangerous anyhow, and maybe we want to get rid of those? I mean, that part of it certainly used to be the main thing that we would speak about is, of course, the risk. But it seems, unfortunately, in a way, to me, that the connection between the money and you know, between militarism and global spending and global warming, that connection is one that is most likely to catch people's attention and make them say, yes, we have to shift our money.
But you know, yeah, I absolutely agree. But there's a third one. You know, military, the armies are destroying the environment day to day.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, with flying, with the military bases, with the tanks, with the oil, the kerosene, the emissions, and there's a large number of facts. I think there's a direct combination between militarism on one side and destroying the environment and the climate.
Yeah, absolutely. And that
this we also have to bring to the people.
It's not publicized much. I do what I can, and there are a few people here in Canada who have been working on showing how much CO2 is actually being put into the atmosphere by military weapons and so on, or even foot soldiers moving around, everything that you do, militarism. That certainly ought to be a very, very high priority, I think. And so, yeah, for sure.
You know, I was 2 days ago in a meeting with these environmental groups, and I asked them, do you know that military is excluded in the in the Kyoto Protocol and in the Treaty for Paris. And they say, military? The emissions of military is not a part of it? I said, no, it's excluded.
That's right.
They don't know it. And
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Absolutely. And it's sort of like, well, we get to spend whatever CO2 we want on military because that's defending you. Well, but I understand that there was a bit of change between the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris one, but not in a way that it required any country to actually report on the amount that they were emitting in their through military.
It is really excluded. There was a discussion coming from some of these critical left countries in the discussion about Paris. It was brought up by Bolivia and mainly by Cuba. They asked, let us include the military and how we can reduce the military, because on one side we need the money, but on the other side we have to reduce the emissions. And above all NATO countries immediately react and say, no, it's not a part of the Kyoto Protocol. We will not open this game. So they stopped the discussion about it.
Well, that I think you're right. That is really a key point to emphasize. And there's another hook on this here in Canada. This whole discussion about the ban treaty, getting countries to endorse or ratify or even sign the Prohibition on Nuclear Weapons Treaty, has meant that it's brought up again a discussion about Canada's role in NATO. And this seems to be a funny compromising situation because public opinion here is very much in favor of staying in NATO. And I think the peace activists would lose support for their campaign to try to get Canada to sign the treaty if they focused on how we have to get out of NATO in order to do it. So the position that some people have taken, and it's a well-argued position, is that Canada could sign it while being in NATO, but serve notice to NATO that we now oppose NATO's policy about the use of nuclear weapons. We want them to forbid it. But there's still other people now saying, no, that's not. We couldn't actually ratify it, and Canada could sign it but not ratify it as a member of NATO. But other people are saying, no, Canada has to get out of NATO completely in order to be eligible to sign it. And that's not a winning argument here, because a large proportion of the population believe that you need to stay in NATO, even though they would like it to be a non-nuclear NATO. Now, I had the impression that if any country might take the initiative of opposing nuclear weapons by NATO, it might be Germany.
Forget it.
Forget it. Okay.
Forget it. You know,
right.
we were quite successful. There are you raise a lot of questions. Let me try to say something to the different part of it. First of all, to the ban treaty or the treaty for prohibition of nuclear weapons. I think this is one of the most important activities we have done over the last years, and I'm very happy that IPB is a founding member of ICANN, and that we from the beginning were very supportive and helpful by developing this treaty. We were also a part of the negotiation committee at the United Nations, so we are a little bit proud of our work for supporting the ban treaty. You know, in Germany, we have now a parliamentarian group of parliamentarians supporting the ban treaty, which includes parliamentarians even from the Conservative Party. This is not the majority, but we have parliamentarians from Social Democrats, Greens, Left, and Conservatives, which are supporting the ban treaty. So that's a good step forward to get a broader support of it. In the society, it is very easy. More than 80% of the German people are absolutely against nuclear weapons. This is by all the polls very easy. I think it's the wrong way to combine or to make a link between nuclear weapons or to the ban treaty and the NATO questions. I think we should separate this. I think we should try to make the ban treaty successful, getting the support of NATO countries and getting the support of people which are in favor of NATO. So I am absolutely against this link. We have the same discussion about the link in Germany. I have doubts if it is possible to get it, because the nuclear weapon strategy is a strong part of the whole military strategy of NATO. But for us, there is no need to combine it. We can say, you know, we want to have the ban treaty ratified, and when you are in NATO and ratifying it and have no nuclear weapons and fight in NATO for abolishing of the nuclear weapons in the NATO countries, that's fine with me and with us. So I'm absolutely not for making a link between these two questions, because it reduced the support for the ban treaty. Because, you know, we have the same situation, maybe not so brutal like you in your country, but we have the same situation in Germany. We have a third of the people which want to leave NATO, but we have the support for NATO by about 65%. This is 20% less than 10 years ago. So we are on a good way. But we have the support, NATO has the support of the majority of the people in our country.
All right.
So
now, is the analysis there similar to what I just said, that some people are arguing, let's say that Germany could sign the ban treaty and stay in NATO, but not ratify it? Is that...
The problem of the German government is, when German government is ratifying or signing the ban treaty, what is the German government doing with the nuclear weapons on German soil? We have to get rid of these nuclear weapons. Otherwise, we could not be a part of the ban treaty family.
So you can do that. There's no obstacle at all to your doing that, right? You don't. No. If, for example, you say, we want you to take your nuclear weapons away, this does not jeopardize your status in NATO. If you want to say. All right.
It is very easy.
Is the situation of Germany exactly the same as that of Canada, in that we could sign the treaty? Now, could Germany ratify the treaty and stay in NATO, and without having NATO change its policy?
You know, the only point which has to be changed is the US nuclear weapons on the German soil must go away. That is the main point. That is not possible when we sign the ban treaty, because the ban treaty is very clear in this. They are against all kinds of nuclear weapons in the country which is ratifying or signing the ban treaty. So that's the point. But that is also very easy. We can do this without leaving NATO. We can do this by finishing the agreement between Germany and the US about the nuclear weapons, US nuclear weapons in Germany. There's a special treaty between the two governments, and you can end this treaty in the time of 2 years. And then the US has to reduce the nuclear weapons.
Well, and yes, but there's also the question of what is NATO's policy. Unless you get NATO to change its policy, which it now says we reserve the right to use nuclear weapons, especially they have all these tactical nuclear weapons, which are not part of any treaty so far. I think they've never been covered. Anyway, that's a small matter, but wouldn't Canada and Germany have to insist that NATO's policy be officially changed?
The nuclear weapon strategy of NATO has to change.
Sure. Yes.
That is the only point. I personally cannot imagine a NATO without nuclear weapons by the political background of NATO. But theoretically, I think it might be possible. Now, you know, when I'm looking to the history of NATO, the nuclear weapons were always playing a very, very important role in the NATO strategy. In the Cold War area, NATO believes, or maybe it was a reality, that the eastern part of Europe was stronger than the western part, conventionally stronger than the western parts, so they need as balance the nuclear weapons. And now they are saying, even when they are on the conventional way much stronger than the East, that they need the weapons. but maybe they develop a future strategy. Theoretically, it is possible. It is not so easy to believe it.
Because now let's get clear about what the forces are. It is the former Soviet bloc countries that want NATO to retain nuclear weapons, and they're the only ones. Am I right?
You know, the only former Soviet Union country which has nuclear weapons is Russia. All the other former Soviet Union countries were giving up their nuclear weapons.
But they want NATO to stay nuclear armed.
You know, Russia would be happy when NATO has no nuclear arms, but you know, the need for anti-nuclear weapons politics means a deep other relations between the United States and Russia. Mm-hmm. You know, we have definitely to go back to the politics of common security. We have definitely to go back to politics of negotiations and agreements and treaties. Mm-hmm. And I cannot see this under the circumstances of confrontation we are living now.
Yeah, right.
But, you know, it is philosophically, it is definitely possible. And you can develop a structure where there is a NATO as a military alliance on the conventional base, the strongest military alliance in the world, but it does not have any nuclear weapons.
Okay, well now tell me, all of this points to the question of how cohesive the EU is, because my impression is that the former Soviet bloc countries are the ones that are the most militaristic minded, want NATO to be more military or retain nuclear weapons. But there's also this fracture going on between the EU itself and Trump, because Trump is so anti-European and so on. So I don't understand the dynamics of what's going on there in terms of, is it possible that many NATO countries will lose their desire for continuing relationship of any military sort with the U.S., given the kind of policies that Trump has been putting forward?
You know, the answer to these questions is absolutely not easy, and it's just for me a deeper background. The deeper background is that, from my understanding, we are in the middle of the fight for a new world order between the big blocs, big international blocs. This is on one side the United States, which becomes weaker. This is on the other side China, which becomes stronger. This is Russia, which again becomes a little bit stronger. And as a fourth player, there's the European Union, which economically is a superpower. Economically, the European Union is stronger than the economy of the United States. And these superpowers, or these powers, are fighting about their influence in this world. And this influence has parts of concurrence between each other and parts of cooperation. And there is a fight between these both shifts, cooperation and confrontation. And the European Union will definitely become much more independent as an own economic, political, and also military superpower in the world. This means the European Union developed now their own military industrial complex based on the military industry of Germany and France, but including them from Italy and Spain and other countries, but mainly on Germany and France. This is the new development of the last maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years, that this is developed in a very, very strong way. We have a new common tank production between Germany and France. We are now developing a new aircraft, the aircraft of the second half of the 21st century between Germany and France, which is a very technological high level added. We are developing new submarines together. We are developing even new small weapons. And they are in concurrence to the US on the military side, because, you know, they are want to export these weapons, and they are in concurrence to the United States, and the United States cannot export their weapons to Europe. So we will not buy the F-35 in Germany and in France, because we are developing our own one. So that is
that's not been decided, is it? I mean,
it is decided to develop these aircraft. Yeah.
You're predicting it, or you're actually
No, it is decided. It is decided. Yes.
Well, what's going to happen to that F-35 then? Sounds like they don't have any takers. And
there will be a concurrence and a big fight in the world. Who has to buy the F-35 and who has to buy the European ones? There will be a huge fight. And now, the Brits are starting also developing their own military aircraft. So this is a new concurrence fight in the world, and with new alliances around these big powers. And I forgot to mention that there is definitely some upcoming powers from the south, above all India. So in this concurrence fight, under the economic circumstances we have, is not peaceful. It always includes conflict and wars.
No, I think I think lots of times the wars occur when a country is losing status, and it's the downward mobility that countries resist the most. The loss of power, the loss of status.
Yeah, but also the upcoming powers are using military forces. From the history, like me, that we have quite the same situation, or an equal situation, under other circumstances, but an equal situation in the beginning of the 20th century. In 1914, we had also the upcoming and the going down countries in the world, and the consequence was the First World War, where we were fighting. The Germans went to become nearer to the sun. They want to have more influence in the world, and the Brits don't want to give up their influence. And the French want on one side the revenge to the Germany, but want to keep their influence in the world, above all in Africa too. So, and what was the result? The result was 20 million killed people.
Yeah.
And I see the danger under the new circumstances with nuclear weapons, that we have the danger of such a war again under these fights between the different economic and political blocks we have in the world.
Yeah.
And all these blocks have internal problems, above all the European Union. But the European Union is united in one point, in the militaristic development. Every European country is supporting that idea, everyone.
But now, how is that consistent with remaining in NATO?
This is a dialectic between confrontation and cooperation. The European Union, and I think also the US, knows that they need, for being the strongest part in the world, as Western world, they need also kinds of cooperation. And this cooperation is organized mainly about NATO. So that's both have interest in NATO to use it against the others, but also they have concurrences. That is, for me, the dialectic between cooperation and concurrence, which is now the main point for me in the world politics now.
Oh, all right.
And absolutely not peaceful. That is the main, from our point of view, to say that is absolutely not peaceful. That is the biggest problem we have, that these fights are definitely not in fighting for a common understanding, for cooperation, for negotiation, for dialogue. No, these are fights on one side in economic wars, which we have now between several countries, including European Union and the United States, but also in military actions and military activities. And the Syrian war at the end was nothing else than a hegemonial fight between these blocks for the influence in this Middle East area.
Tell me what you think the impact of this current flap now is about Trump's removing U.S. soldiers and allowing the Turks to attack the Kurds. How much impact will that have on other debates about the U.S.-EU relations in Europe?
I will give the answer with the words of our foreign minister, Maas. He said, Europe can only rely on Europeans. They cannot any longer rely on the United States. This is historic. This we never had historically, but this is now the new situation. and the European militarization is the answer of our political leaders to this challenge.
And how much difference has it made in the last, what is it, 10 days or so since, or less, since Trump gave the green light to the Turks to do what they would like to do to the Kurds, in effect? How much has that influenced discourse in Europe?
You know, the time is a little bit too short to say that with final words, because, you know, but what my feeling is, our political leads are looking to the situation between Kurds, Syria, and Turks with a huge astonishment. They could not imagine that that happened, because the winner is their biggest opponent. The winner is Russia.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and they are looking and saying, what happened here? From my understanding, it is really...
It has to. Nobody ever says this here. They just treat it as an accidental side effect that Russia will be the beneficiary of this. But in fact, I have a more, suspicious turn of mind. I just actually wonder if Trump wasn't actually smart enough to really anticipate that and be doing it another favor for his friend Putin. I mean, that may have been part of his motivation. I haven't read anybody else saying that could have been it, but that's the effect.
Yeah, the effect definitely is that for the first time in a part of the world where there will be a new order in the future without the main influence of the Western countries and the United States. That we never had in any conflict during the last, maybe I only say 30 years. We never had that. This is historically an absolutely new situation.
So the situation throughout the Middle East is going to be changed in favor of Russia's dominance and the loss of Europe and the US as major factors.
You know, I'm a little bit cautious to say Russian dominance, because, you know, for me, Russia is in totally too weak to be dominant. But Russia has a main influence in the area. And Russia will be, together with all the others, develop a new order in this area. I'm quite sure about it. And frankly speaking, Putin is doing this very, very clever and strategically oriented.
Right? Nobody ever accused him of being dumb.
Yeah.
Nobody. Not a nice guy, but he's certainly not dumb. Let's talk about strategies for IPB. You say you have a big meeting coming up where the question is, what are your future strategies going to be? And I've not been part of that conversation at all. Can you share with me what your thinking is?
Yeah, let me first say, you know, I'm very happy that we are giving the McBride Award to Bruce Kent. You know, he had his 90th birthday this year, and I think it is absolutely correct to give for his long life activities for the peace movement, supporting the peace actions all over the world, developing the activities in Britain and in many other countries, to give him the McBride Awards 2019. So I'm very proud to do it.
I heartily agree.
Yeah, that is for me a very important point. But I want to underline that the second prize will be given to Gomez Wright. She is a Costa Rican ambassador at
I met her
in Geneva now, and she was chairing the UN negotiation for the ban treaty, and we will give her the prize at the NPT conference in New York next year. So I'm really proud that both of them accepted the prize. I think for IPB, it's a good sign. So, you know, I think the three main lines we will discuss. First of all, how to continue helping that the ban treaty becomes reality. And this includes our activities in the preparation and of the NPT conference. We are preparing a huge gathering of the peace movement, other social movements, the weekend before the NPT conference starts in New York. The main topic is nuclear weapons, climate change, and global justice. And we have the UN General Secretary speaking at the end of the conference. We will have Noam Chomsky opening the conference, and it will be a huge one with about 1,500, 2,000 participants in the Riverside Church in New York, in the Church of Martin Luther King. So that is a little bit the highlight for our anti-nuclear weapons activities. Otherwise, in many, many countries, we are very active, getting more governments ratifying and signing the ban treaty. So this, and we also developed some new activities in Europe. We are a part of a European coalition against new nukes, which is discussing what will happen after the end of the INF treaty. So that is our anti-nuclear weapons line, which we will definitely continue and even enlarging. Second is GCOMS. GCOMS and all the military spending activities. We will have our GCOMS again next year. We have a lot of new signs from new organizations.
We should say again what it is. It's the Global Campaign
Against Military Spending.
Right. And so it's broader than nuclear weapons. It's broader.
Yeah, sure. It is broader.
Militarism.
Yeah, the background of it is the announcement of the Swedish Peace Research Institute, announcing the figures for the military budget developments in the different countries, which happens normally at the end of April. And we will, around these announcements, we will have these days of actions. And we are preparing as a new highlight of our activities against military spending, but not only military spending, the following up conference of our Berlin conference from 2016. We will have a world conference of IPB and others in 2021 in Barcelona. And we got a lot of support by the Barcelona city, by the canton of Barcelona, the Peace Research Institutes there, so we are able to do it. It will have military spending in the middle point, but will also include quite all other peace questions and peace activities, and with a main focus on Africa, because Spain is nearby, and the main focus on Mediterranean Sea, militarizing of the Mediterranean area, including the whole refugee question. We are working on that, so that will be in October 2021, but the preparation will be mainly done next year. We will continue our youth activities. We are very proud that we now have really a very independent, good working youth group. We had a international youth conference in September in Germany with about 120 young people from 22 countries. And they founded an IPB youth network, and these IPB youth network will be doing their own activities, but also will be a part of our conference in New York and in Barcelona in 2021. That are three main lines. Our fourth main line, which we start developing during the last 3 or 4 years, is to be more active in the Asian region. And we have we are a part of the Asian European People's Forum, which is developing activities around the Asian European Union meeting. And it has also a security working group, which is doing a lot of activities and where we have a high profile. And for the first time, we have in the IPB board, maybe you remember how Eurocentristic or Euro-Atlantic centristic was the IPB board in the past. We have now 6 members from Asia in the new IPB board.
Oh.
Yeah, India, Japan, South Korea, Philippines, Nepal, and Mongolia. So,
now you mentioned something that was news to me. It's something about a European Union and Asian conference or something.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Because
the European Union there is an official European Union Asian meeting all 2 years where the governments meet. And parallel to this, we have a non-governmental or civil society structure which also meet discussing related topics with the officials are discussing.
So what have been discussed so far in these meetings, and how many such meetings have occurred? Because I'm not aware of them at all. I never heard of that before.
We had 3 international meetings, and we had now a meeting from the Citizens Network in Berlin 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, where we discussed about what is a common security policy for Asia. It was a highly interesting workshop. It was really when you are looking to the IPB website and to the Asian European Pacific website, wait two more weeks, then you can find the main speeches of this conference. It was, for me, a brilliant, highly interesting conference because it really developed new spirit and ideas for such a politics which is absolutely new for this continent. From my understanding, it's not possible to develop one common security policy for Asia because Asia is much too big, but to develop common security politics for different parts of Asia, which includes the interesting point that we have the OSCE, which has also about 10 Asian countries as a member, because all the former Soviet Union republics, including Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and are member of the OSCE. So this could be a good starting point for the politics of common security because they have an historical background in doing that. So very interesting meeting and very interesting discussions.
Well, if you don't mind sending it to me, I'd like to put it on our website. You know, we have, I'm representing this thing called Project Save the World, and we have a very wonderful website, which I hope everybody in the world will recognize as useful. And we have a section, one of the planks of our platform for survival has to do with common security. So we have discussion columns on each of these topics, and I would love to put that in as one of the papers on
no problem
discussion. So I'll definitely put that in on common security. The other thing, a new section called projects, global projects, which is basically a place for various kinds of campaigns. And we have only about 4 or 5 of them up so far. But I'd like to put the GCAMS campaign up, give you a special page where people could contact IPB. Somebody in IPB will kind of monitor this. We'll have links to other organizations that will be supporting the GCAMS, and then this comments column, so there'll be a discussion, like a listserv sort of kind of discussion. Can I put up a page for the GCAMS?
Yes, you know, they have an own website. When you Google GCAMS, you will find the website, and they developed it new. It is open since 2 weeks. It's a very nice new website. Our Catalan or Spanish, our Catalan colleagues were developing it very, very nice, because you know that the headquarter for all our military spending activities is the IPB office in Barcelona. So we have a little bit the burden sharing between the different...
Barrera?
No, Jordi is doing this.
Okay. Good.
Yeah? To make the, you know, first of all, we have a new board. And, you know, for the first time, we have a very international trade unions leader as the new president of the International Peace Bureau. Philip Jennings, who was the former general secretary of UNI Global Network, which is a trade union with 26 million members, one of the biggest trade unions in the world, will become the new IPB president. He will be my successor because I have to leave this position after 6 years. So this is the background that I can say that we are really developing our relation to the international trade unions movement very intensively during the last years. They are supporting our conference in New York, the International Trade Unions Confederation, ITUC, which is the worldwide trade unions confederation, is supporting our conference. We are in strong relation with them. We are really, so that is a huge step forward, and I'm very happy that Philip accepted to be a candidate, and now I can say that he is elected, even when the results will be announced on Saturday morning.
It'll be a one-person presidency, not a...
No, we have 2. Lisa will continue.
Who?
She has her second, Lisa Clark, her second term.
Okay.
And Philip starts and has his first term. Next 2 years, when the board will elect me, what I think is quite sure, I will be the general secretary of IPB.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a very interesting change, because I've been a little bit worried about the diffuseness of the organization since Colin has retired. I didn't, not that it was a step down, it may be just fine, but I didn't understand it. Would this be more now the notion of establishing Berlin as the headquarters for IPB?
You know, we have definitely these three headquarters. We have still Geneva, which is chaired by Ariel Denise. I think you know her.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, she was coming from ICANN, so she brought a lot of experience with her. She is mainly responsible for our nuclear weapons work. We have Barcelona with the GCOMS work, and we have the more or less the headquarter, which includes the bureaucratic headquarter in Berlin. That are the three headquarters. We decentralized the work, so the offices have specific responsibilities. But you know, I think we are on a quite good way. And the good point is that Philip is also living near to Geneva, so there is a strong contact with the Geneva office. So for me, it looks quite fine.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And yeah, so
good. Well, good luck to you. That's
thank you.
a very promising outcome. It's been fun talking to you, Reiner. Good wishes for this weekend.
Thank you so much, and all the best to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
This conversation is one of the weekly series Talk About Saving the World, produced by Peace Magazine and Project Save the World. Please visit our website at tosavetheworld.ca, where you can sign the Platform for Survival, a list of 25 public policy proposals that, if enacted, would greatly reduce the risk of 6 global threats to humankind. Come back next week for another discussion of a serious global issue.